Welcome back to the Rock Your Comeback podcast. I'm your host, Nichole Eaton, author of Rock Your Comeback, the Down to Earth Guide to Reclaiming Your Power. And I'm here with my good friend, Justin Schenck. He is a podcaster, a speaker, and entrepreneur. He is the host of the Growth Now podcast and creator of the Growth Now movement. He's the founder of the Skeleton Key Mastermind and was top ranked podcast on Inc.com, which is pretty badass. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, Nicole, thank you so much for having me. It's so funny. You asked me to be on, and I was like, wasn't I already on? But now we're here. I'm excited for the conversation.
I was on your podcast. So we
Yes.
had a conversation. So make sure you check out my episode on Justin's podcast, Growth Now. But I'm excited to have you because you and I have kind of run in the same business circle for a couple years now. And I love what you're creating, but I'm curious, creating something as big as what you've worked on takes time, it takes effort, and it takes a starting point. Where was the Growth Now movement created out of?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. So I started podcasting 9 years ago, and to kind of put that in context, like if you told somebody you had a podcast 9 years ago, they would go, "What's a podcast?" Like that's how much the space has changed.
Right.
I happen to know one podcaster, and I was like, I might be able to do that. And the original idea behind the show was I was going to interview entrepreneurs, pick their brain, figure out how to be a better entrepreneur because I had three failed businesses at that point, and I was like, I'm doing something wrong. What can I do to get a little bit better at this? And what ended up happening was 6 months before I launched the show, my mom lost a 20-year battle to opioids. It changed who I was on the inside almost immediately. And those conversations started to become about rock bottom moments and how to love yourself and all of these things that a lot of my platform is now built on. But it came from a place of sadness for me. Like I was really in a bad place. I didn't love myself. I didn't know where I was going, what I was doing. And I think because of that authenticity in those conversations, that's why the show ended up taking off. And then 2 years after, Inc. magazine put me on that list, and it really changed my life. And it really came from it started with a place of desperation with no direction, and then opportunity started to show itself. Right, so people started asking me to speak, and then I was like, oh, let me do a live event so I can bring this platform to people in person, and then started coaching people. And so it all kind of came organically, not knowing what I was going to do. And it's really been a blessing. Like I feel blessed every single day to wake up and do what I do.
I think so many people start something out of pain. And one of the things you said at the Growth Now movement event was that you were actually interviewing people to get tips on how to do better in your life. What is one of the most profound tips that just still sits with you to this day?
It's something that I asked a specific question every single interview. I'm sure I asked you. It's a two-part question. The first part is, what's your definition of success? The second part is, what are three things you do every single day to ensure that success for yourself? And I didn't realize this until I spoke at an event and I went to Q&A with the audience, and one of the questions was, what's the theme with all the people you've interviewed? Now, keep in mind, I've interviewed people like you, Ed Milet, then Burt Kreischer, professional wrestlers. Like I've been all over the map. And so I'm like, how do you find a theme between all these people? And I realized that the three things they did every single day were to fill their cup in some way, shape, or form, whether it was exercise, meditation, prayer, whatever. It was filling their cup. And I realized that I was trying to pour from an empty cup. I wasn't worried about myself. I was trying to help everybody else, and I wasn't helping myself. And when I made the switch to I now have four non negotiables every single day, that when I dive into those non negotiables, I make sure my cup is full. And then everything that overflows from my cup is for everybody else. And I realized once I started doing that, I started serving on a whole nother level. My business grew, my audience grew, everything in my life got better, including my relationships. And it was just really this crazy aha moment for me, because when you've done 560 plus episodes, you're like, okay, well, what are the key takeaways and the nuggets? Because I've learned so much over the years. But that to me is the thing that I've instilled into myself that has changed the game for me. And yeah, it's really, really crazy. But that's probably the biggest one. The other thing obviously is relationships. Like make sure you keep your people close. Like once you find your core group of people, make sure you keep them super close to you, because I found that everybody operating on a high level kind of has their counsel, right? They have the people that they can pour into, and those people pour back into them. And that's been also a game changer for me. Like I really focus on building strong relationships.
It really matters, and it really matters when it comes to seeing what's possible. I think that was the biggest thing for me when I started to meet new people, especially in the business world. I thought I was doing really well, and I was, right? But then there was, other levels that I'm seeing people be successful at that it was like, "Wait a second. Oh, wait, I can have that too. I can create that too." So I think that that's really important, and I wanna talk about, like, the people you surround yourself with because I think you have such a brilliant idea, but I wanna ask you the question, like, what is your definition of success, and what are your 4 non-negotiables?
Yeah, so my definition of success, it's been this for a while. And obviously, I think your definition of success kind of evolves and changes as you get older, right? Like now I'm 40, there's a different appreciation of life at 40 than it was at 25. Like if I answer that question at 25, I would say, "Oh, go get $1 million and buy the house and do all the things society told me to do." But now it's to do what I want, when I want, with whom I want, which means I design my life first, and my business is built around my life. And so that is my definition of success. And then my 4 non-negotiables are pretty easy, right? One, I move my body in some way, shape, or form, whether it's taking a walk or lifting a weight or whatever. The second piece is I do a daily visualization practice. So I'll sit, whether it's 5, 15 minutes, and I'll visualize something, right? If I'm getting closer to my event, I visualize my event and I attach it to all of my senses. What's it look like? What's it feel like? What's it smell like? What's it sound like? All the things. And I put myself in that moment. And what I realize is when you're able to visualize on such a deep level, and you know this with manifestation, right? When you visualize on such a deep level, it becomes so much easier to take the action needed to build what you're trying to build, right? Like, because you get excited about it, like your body's there, right? You're moving that energy, and so that's the second piece. The third piece is I learn something new every single day, whether it's listening to a podcast, reading a book, watching a YouTube video. I learn something new because I believe what's not growing is dead. And then the fourth piece is I reach out to somebody I care about every single day and just check in on them. Hey, hope you're well. It's been a while. If I know they're struggling with something, I check in on that. But that piece to me has really been a game changer because I started doing that probably 5 or 6 years ago. And rarely does a day go by where somebody doesn't reach out to me and check in on me because of this whole entire community that I'm building. And so those are my 4 non-negotiables. That's what I do to fill my cup every single day, and that's what makes it easier for me to serve.
Having practices like that, I love that you're saying, "These are what I do for me," but now I'm actually seeing them come back at me. I'm seeing people reach out and be like, "Hey, how are you?" I think that is a good reminder that the work starts inside, even with the visualization practice. What got you into doing visualization?
Yeah, I don't really know. Like, I'm sure I heard it somewhere, and I was like, "Oh, that sounds that sounds really good."
Nice.
And then I think over time, like honestly, you know what? Let me rephrase that. So I used to go to like meditation class, and so it'd be like an hour long, and I was like, I suck at this. Like I'm the worst meditator of all time, and it's almost like my meditation practice became a visualization practice because my brain is so active, and I'm able to kind of concentrate on that one thing. And so it is kind of a mixture of meditation and visualization, but it probably came from the idea that I thought that I was terrible at meditation, so I was like, let me do it a little bit differently, and so obviously that's kind of where it started, but. I just love it, right? Because it gets me amped up. And sometimes I'll do it to music. So like I have a soundtrack to my events, right? And so like I'll be playing that music while I'm visualizing the event. And so it's evolved over time. I feel like I've gotten a little bit better at it. And hopefully, as I continue to practice, I'll get even stronger and more clear on my visions. But it probably came from a lack of thinking that I was just terrible at meditation, which turned into the visualization practice versus meditation.
One of the things that you talk a ton about is the people in your life and the intentional people in your life, and I love that you kind of started off as this person who was dealing with like massive grief and was seeking, inspiration from all of these interviews that you were doing to build your podcast. But now it's how do you grow and who's around you? So I know you have this theory and this idea about having your personal board of directors. Can you explain that a little bit and who needs to be on it?
Yeah, so we all know the quote, "You're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with." And I heard that first when I was 19 years old, and I was like, "Okay, let me get rid of all my loser friends, go find 5 millionaires, and I need to go hang out with them." And very quickly, I realized that's not realistic, right? And so I really brushed that quote under the rug. And every time it would pop back up, which is a very popular quote, but every time it would pop back up, I was like, whatever. Like, just worry about yourself, focus on yourself. Fast forward when I started to get the success, I kind of looked back and I was like, well, let me reassess this. Who were those 5 people, right? And they've changed over time, but I realized the 5 people weren't necessarily like the 5 people that I spent the most time with, but they were the 5 people that I was most intentional with, and they all played specific roles in my life. And so these are the 5 different roles that these people have played, and I still have it to this day. So the first person is your cheerleader, right? The person who, when you get off the phone with them, they make you feel like you can run through a brick wall, right? Like mine's Chuck Balsamo, who I'm sure you've met. Like He's the greatest cheerleader of all time. I feel really, really blessed to have found him in my life and created a friendship with him. But when you get off that phone and you feel like your $1 million idea is now a $1 billion idea, that's your cheerleader. The second person is your bruiser, right? This is the person who pushes you, who asks you the tough questions, who says, "Hey, maybe you're not looking at that the right way." And I always like to be clear here: this is not an abuser. It's not an abuser. It's a bruiser, right? Like they're doing it from a well-intentioned place to help you, to serve you, to help get you to that next level that you're trying to get to. The third person is your softie. So obviously, you're not always going to win. Things get tough. Things fall apart, right? Like when COVID hit, I lost everything. I lost 75% of my income, and I needed my softie, she's now my wife. But it's that shoulder to cry on, right? Like the person who can hear you out and then help you brush yourself off and pick you back up. The fourth person is a mentor. I do look at mentor a little bit differently. To me, a mentor is somebody who has something innate inside of them that you want more inside of you, right? So this is like, for me, my mentor is Fabio Viviani, and the reason he's my mentor is because I want to be able to give even more than I give now, and he's the biggest giver I've ever met in my life. Never ask for anything in return and will just give and give and give because he's able to. And so I want to emulate that as I grow and become a better person. And then the fifth piece is a coach. I believe at any given time you should be invested in your future in some way, shape, or form. And I don't care if that coach is in wellness, spirituality, relationships, whatever, business. You should just always have a coach. I've had coaches in all those areas. But I feel like when you're financially invested in your future, your back's up against the wall a little bit more, and it makes it a lot easier to come out swinging, right? It makes it a lot easier to take that action. And you see it in masterminds, and you see it when you're coaching. Like, if I'm paying for this, I better get something out of it. So it's a lot easier to take that action. I remember when COVID hit, like I mentioned earlier, I lost 75% of my income, and I was like, I need to do something. And I hired a coach, paid him a lot of money, and I got on a call with him, and he's like, well, what do you want to do? I go, I just want to get paid to be me. And it was Roberto, who you know very
Yeah.
well. And he was the first person that didn't laugh at me when I said that I just wanted to get paid to be me. And so the work began. And I remember our first coaching call, we were going through things. He's like, this is what you need to do. Boom, boom, boom. We got on the second call. He's like, all right, so where are you at? I go, I did everything you told me to do. What's next? And he almost fell out of his chair because he was like, no, nobody like just does the things I tell him to do. I go, look, dude, I need to replace income, and I need to replace income fast. And you're the guy I'm paying to help me do that. And so, if I wasn't financially invested, if it was just a free call with my friend Roberto, I probably wouldn't have done that. And that's the importance of really paying for that coach.
When it comes to your personal board of directors, where do you find these people? I think there's people who are maybe at the early stage that you were at when you started the podcast, when you were dealing with the grief with your mom. And I think that grief and loss and just feeling stuck in your life can feel really lonely. It can feel really like embarrassing. How do you find people when you're not in a good spot?
Yeah, it's I the easiest way is to get in rooms where people think differently, right? Whether it be in a mastermind or it be a live event like Growth Now Summit Live or whatever, right? What to get uncomfortable and put yourself in a room with people that are playing at a different level, that are thinking differently. Those are the types of people that can support you. Now, to answer more specifically, I found all of my people in such different ways, right? Like Chuck Balsamo, who's now been on my podcast 5 times, most of all time. He DM'd me on Twitter. And then we just started building a relationship because I was like, whoa, who is this guy? Like, I loved his message. He had this big reach. I was like, this is crazy. Like, let's get to know each other. And then fast forward, he married me and my wife. And so it's like, this like, okay, he slid into my DMs, and now he's my cheerleader, right? And my bruiser was, I had just started the podcast. I went out to an event in Ohio, and I met this guy also named Justin. So Coach Cav, who you also know. And I was like, okay, this guy's tough. Like, this guy pushes buttons. I didn't like him at first, but he stayed in touch with me, and I think that's a great bruiser, right? Somebody who is willing to go out of their way to make sure that like you're headed in the right direction. And he saw something in me that I didn't see in myself at that time. But I just attended an event and I happened to meet him there, and we stayed in touch. The third, my softie, I met on Bumble, right? Like, I met my wife on Bumble, and she's my softie. So there's always different ways. But I think that the main thing is first to be really intentional about finding these people. I think most people can't find these people because they're not looking, right? So, like, if you're able to understand, okay, these are the 5 people, I'm lacking a cheerleader in my life, I need to find that person. And so what you do is you go to an event, or you get into rooms you've never been into before, and you start to talk with people and you build those relationships. And over time, if those people fit the category of cheerleader or bruiser, they will fall into that place as long as you maintain that relationship. And that's really the key, is like maintaining that relationship, giving as much as you possibly can. And in return, they end up falling into that category. Now, I'm not saying go up to these people and go, "Hey, I want you to be my cheerleader," right? Like, because that's kind of weird. Like, my people know who they are because I talk about it, but before I was talking about it, they didn't realize those roles they played. They just played those roles, and so just be really intentional about it. Get into new rooms with new people, and you'll begin to find those individuals.
The bruiser is one of the most crucial parts because I think you can have people who are just cheering you on and having that feedback, having somebody say, I think you're wrong about that. I think that that's a really important piece when it comes to being a well-rounded version of yourself. And so for somebody who's trying to differentiate between an abuser and a bruiser, what are those like core elements that you can point out for people so they can really make the distinction between somebody who's difficult and challenging versus somebody who's, talking down to you?
Yeah, well, first, you wanna find somebody who has done what you've done, or if they're not in your specific field, has created that success for themselves. I have found that when people are operating at a super high level, they don't criticize, right? Like, you get to a point in business where it's collaboration, it's never competition, right? And so, like, for that's the first piece. Make sure that they're well ahead of you. If they are where you're at or below you, they're usually criticizing you, right? They're being an abuser because they want to beat you, right? So it can't be somebody you're in competition with at all. Somebody who also gives insight, who's also empathetic, right? So here's the piece: they can be a bruiser and also very empathetic. Like, if you're going through a hard time, they can turn that off. They can turn that harder thing off. If they're being an abuser, they're not going to be able to turn it off, right? Like, Cav is my I can't even think. Cav is my bruiser, and he can be a very tough bruiser. But like when I went through like the death of my mom, like he was very empathetic through all of that. Like he could understand all of those things. I remember one time I was broke, right? Like I was building a business and I was talking with him, and he would get on the call and he would point me in the right direction, but he was doing it with empathy because I was not in a place that I could receive it in such an evil way. Fast forward a couple years later, business was good, and I just lost out on a client that would have added $25,000 to my bottom line. And I called him like, "Bro, I lost this client. I think I fucked up, blah, blah, blah." And he goes, "Dude, don't even call me with this." He's like, "6 months ago, a year ago, you couldn't pay your rent, and now you're complaining about this. Go out there and just get another client." Right? Like, these are the types of things when that person can find that balance of empathy and pushing you, like that's really the key. So make sure they have that empathy piece.
Yeah, I think that's really important, and you would have to know Cav to understand exactly that he's very no bullshit. He's a very intimidating presence, but very no bullshit. But having people from those different elements. Now, who are you to people out of those 5 boards of directors?
Yeah, I wish I was a cheerleader. Like, everybody wants to be the cheerleader, but I'm just not. I'm a bruiser for sure. Just because I don't like people whining. I don't like when somebody says they're going to do something and then 6 months later they still haven't done it. So I'm through and through a bruiser. God bless my wife. I am her bruiser as well, although she probably wishes that I was her softie. And so, with that being said, like that's you kind of have to be honest with yourself. You can't play a role. You can't pretend that you're a cheerleader. Now, I can cheer people on, like, absolutely, I'm proud of you, great job. But I'm more of the, okay, what's next? Right. And so, like, I like that type of thinking. And so I am definitely, without a doubt, a bruiser. I'm pretty proud of it too.
I can see that. I feel like I'm actually a different 2 different people. And I don't know if that's just like my reflection with therapy and that and energy, but I do feel like with certain clients, I am much more of a bruiser, much more of a like, I know I want to squeeze more out of you. And then there's people where I'm like just so soft, so empathetic. And then there's people I'm just like your biggest hype girl. Do you feel like that different people can show up in different ways for depending on the relationships?
Yeah, 100%. But what I always like to do is like, I would question you and go, well, so first of all, if I had to guess what you were, like based off of knowing you for many years now, I think you're a softie. Like, I think you can be an ear to listen. I think you can encourage people post the listening, all of those types of things. So I think innately that's who you are. Now, can we do other things when needed, of course. But you're not necessarily that role to that individual, right? So like if somebody in their mind goes, okay, Nichole is my softie, you will, because of your interactions and how they interact with you, you will automatically be that softie to them because of how they've built that relationship. That's why you're able to go, well, I'm this person to this and I'm this over here. But I always go, well, who are you innately? And then I'm sure there are people that are intentionally utilizing you in their life for that role. And so like I'm not a bruiser to everybody. Like usually people in the mastermind or people that I work with, I fall into that role because they want me to be that role. But I can cheer you on too. Like I love seeing people win. But I always go, ask yourself, who are you innately, and then try and really ramp that up, because if that's who you are, that's your superpower. Lean into it and give more of that to the people that need it.
I love that question, who are you innately? It just gives you a good reflect. I think that authenticity gets you further anyway. Like that if you can lock into your authenticity, it makes your relationships better. It makes you a better version of you for the people around you, and it makes you magnetic for the things you want anyway. How can we become the kind of person that others would want on their board of directors?
Yeah, I think curiosity, like be curious about what people are doing and how they're doing it. Ask the right questions. Be intentional with the conversations you're having with people. I really believe curiosity is a superpower. I think that if people were more curious instead of judgmental, we'd be a lot better of a world in general. And so when I meet somebody, I hate talking about myself. When I speak on stages and I have to talk about my accomplishments, if I don't have a proper introduction, you have to boost yourself up so people lean in and listen, right? My voice will shake. Not that I'm nervous, I just don't like talking about myself. So like when I meet somebody, I'm immediately like, "Hey, tell me more about what you do. What's that? What are you working on?" And those are the types of things that I think people then want you in their inner circle because they're like, well, this person cares. He's curious about what I'm working on. So I would say be more curious. One thing I adopted years ago was, I tried to be the most interesting person in every room I walked into. And when I switched to being the most interested person, that's when a lot changed. That's when my circles got better. That's when my business started to grow. That's when my relationships got stronger. And so my goal is every room I walk into to be the most interested person instead of the most interesting. Because guess what? If you're the most interested, you're usually also the most interesting because people want to be around you. And that in itself is magic.
Yeah. When it comes to walking in bigger rooms, right? So a lot of people walk into these rooms, they're looking for their board, they're feeling insecure as shit. Because a lot of times when we walk into these bigger rooms, like we know these people are at a place that maybe you're not. How do you deal with that? And what advice would you give?
Yeah, I'm a big believer of faking it till you make it. Like, don't lie, but pretend in your mind that that person also wants to meet you. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but Andy Frisella said this one thing that I was like, yes, that's how I've been trying to say it. And of course, he said it the best way. He goes, it's like sleeping. You have to pretend you're asleep before you fall asleep. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's so true." Right? So when you're pretending or you're going into a room going, "I'm powerful, I am good, I deserve this relationship. I deserve to have that person in my life." Your body starts to vibrate differently and you give off that energy. And what ends up happening is as long as you're honest with that person, that relationship will form. And then you'll become the person that you were just pretending to be over time. And so for me, it was always about walking into rooms and go and just telling myself, I'm enough, I'm enough. Like when I think about some of the people that I interview on my show, like I still get nervous every time. I want to cancel interviews before every single interview. Like I get that nervous, right? But then I get on the call and I begin to build that rapport, and quickly it goes away because we're just two humans having a conversation. And so that's how you have to approach it in general. I will say this though, my number one person on my list to have on my podcast is Andy Grammer, and I met him. I won VIP meet and greets because I donated to a nonprofit, and I shit the bed. I was so nervous. I forgot words that I wanted to say, and like thank God my wife was there because she actually spoke and I barely spoke. And so I should have taken my own advice when it came to that. But I just fake it till you make it, and that energy shift will make a big difference for you.
How do you differentiate? Like, you meet so many people, and I know for me personally, like, I've met so many wonderful people, like, just awesome people. How do you differentiate the people who are for you and for your personal board and who maybe are awesome but aren't?
Yeah, so I wish I had a better answer than this, but I'm a really good reader of people. Like right off the rip, I can figure out if they want something from me or if they're just genuinely good people. Like my whole thing is like give more than you receive. That's the number one rule in my mastermind. That's the rule I take into my life of like always give more than I receive. I end every single conversation the same way with a genuine like let me know how I can support you. Like that is a genuine like ask, right? Um and so, like, I can just read if somebody wants something from me very, very quickly. Even a DM in my inbox, I go, "This person just wants to be on my podcast," or "This person just wants to speak on my stage." They may be dancing around it a little bit, but just be super aware and don't be afraid to say, "Okay, that person's not for me." By the way, if you say that in your mind about somebody and they're still around supporting you 6 months from now, okay, maybe you were wrong, right? Like pay attention to that stuff too. Who's supporting you? Who's cheering you on? Who's showing up to the things you're doing? You know, I don't have a specific way to do it. I'm fortunate enough that just a really good reader of people. But just pay attention to their moves. You don't have to make a decision right away, right? Like it might take some time. I've made bad calls before. I've been in business partnerships with people who were super shifty, and I didn't realize it because they could hide it really well, right? And so just let it play out. Be yourself. Give as much as you possibly can, and then if you feel like the person's taking too much and not returning that in any way, then it's time to step away.
I like the idea of giving like a good 6 months to assess it too, because I think, especially for people who are listening, right? My audience is so empathic, so intuitive, so easily able to read. But the difference between being easily able to read people and trusting yourself enough to listen to it are two whole separate things. So I think that sometimes over 6 months span, we're able to see like people's true colors and prove to ourselves one direction or another, these people belong in my life or they don't.
Yeah. Yeah, and, I mean, for me so I'm a triple Virgo, and so, like, I'm just very just matter of fact. So, like, it's it's cut and dry, like, there's no BS in my life, I don't have time for it, and so, for me, I don't have a problem being like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, that person's not for me." Like, I look at it from a standpoint of there was a time in my life that I didn't talk to my dad for 7.5 years, because there wasn't a good relationship, it wasn't serving me in any way, it was a negative, it was a pull, it was really bad. Now we have a great relationship now, but with that being said, like I'm not afraid to cut off the closest people to me if it's not good for me. We only get one life that we consciously remember, and so when I look at that piece of it, I'm just like I can't waste time. I'm 40 now, like I'm halfway there. Like I have no time to waste, and I'm very blunt and matter of fact with with most people in most situations. It took time. I think that comes with age too. Like you get to a certain point where you're just like I don't have time for BS anymore. When you're 23, you're like, yeah, whatever. Like I'll hang out with anybody and do anything and whatever. But as you get older, it just becomes apparent that you're just wasting time and you don't want to do that. And you just say it like it is, I guess.
I've been so protective of my time over the last like couple of years. My daughter is graduating next year, which is wild, but it's just like I have very limited time for other people. And so I want to make sure that the time that I do have for other people, that I'm spending it with quality, inspiring humans. And so you're absolutely right. I think as you age or as you're in different phases of your lives, you just can't afford. And I think that's self-love too, right? Self-love is knowing your boundaries and knowing who belongs in your life and who's actively adding to your life and who's not. But you go through different seasons where you might have more time to be networking with everybody and their mom, and seasons where you have to be very intentional about who's in your personal space. So I love the idea of really making sure that you have these 5 people and that you're nurturing the relationships with these specific people who help you grow and develop as a person.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you said that. And it's funny, like when I was younger, I had FOMO all the time. Like I needed to be at every networking event. I needed to be in every room. I needed to be seen. And now it's so opposite. Like if I show up to anything, especially like in my local town, people are like, oh my God, I can't believe you're actually here. Right. Like it's like this really weird kind of shift of energy. But look, you're a podcaster. Like we literally have the greatest networking tool of all time. Like reach out to somebody you look up to and go, hey, I would love for you to be on my podcast. Like there's a good chance they might say yes, and so now all of a sudden you're networking with the greats, you're networking with some of the top people in the world, and that changes the game too. Like I can't do small talk anymore because I've been podcasting for 9 years and deep, serious conversations that actually lead to something. If you come at me with small talk, I'm checked out. Like I'm not listening. I might be in the room still, but I'm not listening. And so like it really rewires you as you get more elevated in your circles, when your conversations become different. Like it literally changes the way you look at everything. And yeah, well, with the kids getting older, like after this call, I'm going to go see Aiden running his track meet. And I realized, okay, well, there's only 3 more years of that. So don't complain about sitting out in the hot sun for 2.5 hours, jerk. You know what I mean? So like be there, be present. It's super important because one day you won't have that. And so make sure you're super, super present with the people that you want. I think that's so key. So I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, this is amazing. I've loved this conversation with you. Is there any last words of wisdom that you have for the audience?
Yes, get uncomfortable, right? Like I think it kind of falls in line with everything that we've been talking about. Just get uncomfortable because if you're not getting uncomfortable, you're not able to grow. Growth happens outside of your little box. And so if you're looking to level up your life, if you're looking to fix the people that are around you, meaning like get rid of the ones you have and get new ones, you have to get uncomfortable. And once you start to get uncomfortable, the success will follow you. I remember so distinctly like how I used to chase money and it would just elude me. And when I started focusing on those four non-negotiables, when I started focusing on the relationships, when I started focusing on all these things we talked about in this conversation, money chases me. Like I can't tell you how many times a year people are like, how do I pay you? Like, how do I pay you? How do I want to pay you? Let me pay you. It's the weirdest thing in the world because I'm like, well, I didn't think it was that type of relationship, but if you want to pay me, here's my Venmo. Like, I don't know, right? Like, money will find you. That success will find you if you get uncomfortable, because it was not comfortable 9 years ago to buy a microphone and say I'm starting this podcast and you put yourself out there, right? I was so unsure of myself that I had a co-host for the first year because I didn't want to fail alone. And like that's crazy to think about, but if you don't get uncomfortable, you're not going to have the success.
Money chases me. I love that. I think too, when we're living in our authenticity and we're finding our joy in our life, and I know you were saying you design your day, you're very intentional. Justin works 2 to 3 hours a day. Is that what I heard correctly?
Yeah, and when I'm not in like a busy season, I won't work Fridays either.
Yeah. So you can really create the life that you desire, and you can do it when you're intentional about who you are, who you surround yourself with, and what you want your life to really, really look like and embody. So I've loved this. I know people are going to want to listen to the Growth Now podcast. They're going to join the Growth Now movement. How can they do that? What's the best way for them to connect with you?
Yeah, wherever they're listening to this, they can just search Growth Now. My show will come up. And I always say, like, listen to a couple episodes. If you vibe with it, click subscribe and come on the journey with us. Because that's all this is just a crazy journey. They can also follow me on Instagram at Justin T. Schenck. You can see how to spell my name in the show notes because nobody spells it right. And other than that, if they want to come to the event next year, we have tickets are on sale now. It's growthnowsummit.com.
I will drop all of that into the show notes so you can find it super easy and connect with Justin because he's amazing. Thanks so much for being a guest.
Thanks for having me, Nichole. This is great.